The first group of responses that was found to be unhelpful was what we call punishing responses. So these were punitive responses. Oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you're hopeless, you're no good, you're lazy, so-and-so, get up, get out and do these things, etc. These were responses that were basically almost cruel and punishing in some sort of way. And what we found is that those sorts of responses were associated with, in the patient, higher levels of distress. So these people, this was angry type responses that led to the patient feeling bitter and upset and uncared for. So that's not necessarily helpful, because those sorts of negative emotions aren't good for anyone in the long term. Now, there's another group of responses that seem to be the opposite of that, and these were called solicitous responses. So this is when the partner or the spouse or the carer would say, "Don't worry, dear, I'll do everything for you. I know you're not well. There, sit down, I'll get you a cup of tea, I'll do everything for you." Now, ostensibly, they seem like very helping and helpful responses. But in reality, if you take that too far, what we found is that those sorts of overly solicitous responses were associated with lower levels of distress but higher levels of dysfunction. So in effect, if you do everything for the person, they don't learn to do it on their own, and they start to actually feel useless after a while. So although that might seem better than the first responses, it wasn't ideal. The first responses, punishing responses, were associated with high levels of distress. The overly solicitous responses were associated with high levels of dysfunction and disability. The third category, and these seem to be the most helpful responses, are what we call supportive responses. And this is kind of a balance between the two. The supportive responses were most helpful because they led to low levels of distress and low levels of disability. They led to high levels of functioning and high levels of positive emotion. And the supportive responses were things like, they were very caring, saying, "Look, I know you're in pain, darling. I know, sorry that you're going through this, but how can I help you do what you want to do? Okay? And I'm not going to do it for you because that's not necessarily in your long-term interest, but I want to care for you. I want to support you. I'm going to offer you as much love and compassion as I can, but how can I also help you?" So it's like giving, rather than a hand out, it's a hand up. And the metaphor I often use to help people understand is that, as any parent would know, if you do everything for your child, then he or she will never learn to do it on his or her own. If I tie my son's shoelaces every day, he's never going to learn to tie up his own shoelaces. And it's the same with adults. If we do everything for them, that might be nice kind of in the short term, but it's not necessarily in anyone's interest in the long term. So ultimately, as a carer, what we wanted to be working towards is that balanced group of supportive responses, which is compassionate, loving, caring, but also helping and empowering that person to do what they can for themselves.